There is a quiet hunger that grows inside us almost from the moment we can remember, the hunger to be seen. Not just looked at with passing eyes, not noticed in the shallow way people scroll through faces in a crowd, but really seen, understood, recognized, validated in our essence. It is one of the most primal acts of being human, and for most of us, it never leaves. As children, we are trained into it. When a child scrapes a knee, the pain is real, but the first reaction is often not to inspect the wound itself. The first reaction is to look up, scanning for witnesses. If someone notices, if someone reacts, the pain feels justified. The cry is received, the suffering has weight. But if no one notices, if the room is silent, the child often cries louder, trying to amplify the suffering so that it finally earns acknowledgement. In that moment, something takes root, the belief that pain deserves recognition. We carry this forward into life. Every time we ache, every time we struggle, we hope that someone will see it.
Teachers, parents, friends, lovers, we want them to witness our hurt, our sacrifice, our endurance. Recognition feels like proof that the suffering was real, that it mattered, that we matter. And when recognition doesn't come, we feel a strange betrayal. This expectation has been woven into us by the stories we hear. The wounded hero is praised. The martyr is remembered. The one who sacrifices is immortalized. So we grew up half believing that suffering always guarantees witnesses, that pain will automatically draw eyes. Those wounds will naturally invite comfort. But life is not a story written for an audience. The world is not a parent rushing to bandage every knee. And the truth comes slowly, bitterly. Most of the time, the world is not watching. This realization can feel like abandonment. We stumble through heartbreak, and no one notices the sleepless nights. We fight silent battles with doubt, with depression, with exhaustion, and the crowd continues moving, oblivious. At work, sacrifices are overlooked. In friendships, the quiet efforts vanish. Online, posts sink into the ocean without a ripple. We scream quietly into the universe. Why does no one see me? The Stoics would say, because the world is not designed to see you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, during one of the most turbulent times of his life, "Do not waste the remaining part of your life on thoughts about others. When you do not refer your thoughts to some object of common utility." He reminds himself, and us, that people are consumed by their own chaos. They are not ignoring you out of malice. They are trapped inside their own storms. Think about it. When was the last time you truly saw someone else's invisible pain? How many people pass you each day who may be grieving, or breaking, or quietly enduring something heavy, and you never notice? Just as their eyes slip past you, your eyes slip past them. This is not cruelty. It is the nature of existence. And yet, because we grew up equating recognition with worth, invisibility feels like erasure. We imagine that if no one sees us, our life has less meaning. But here lies the paradox. The more you build your identity on being seen, the more invisible you become. Consider the performer who only feels alive under applause. When the stage lights fade, they collapse into despair, unsure if they even exist without an audience. Consider the friend who dramatizes every wound, hoping each scar will draw sympathy. Their life becomes a performance of suffering, a theater for recognition. But what happens when the audience turns away? They feel as if they disappear. The craving to be seen often twists us. We exaggerate our struggles. We curate our identities to look valuable in other people's eyes. We measure the worth of our experiences by how others respond. And in this distortion, something tragic occurs. We no longer see ourselves. Seneca warned against this kind of emptiness. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. To crave recognition is to create poverty of the soul. No matter how much attention you receive, it is never enough, because the hunger itself grows with every bite. In the modern world, this poverty is everywhere. Social media trains us to perform vulnerability for likes. People craft curated versions of their pain, hoping to convert suffering into digital approval. But this approval is fleeting, shallow, gone in a scroll. The heart remains unseen, even while the post is liked. Psychologists call this social comparison bias. We're wired to measure our worth through how others perceive us. And yet those others are themselves caught in their own performances, measuring their worth through how we see them. It is a hall of mirrors, no one truly seeing, no one truly seen. And so we suffer. We tell ourselves, if only someone noticed, if only someone understood, the pain would be easier. But clinging to this illusion only deepens the wound. The Stoic alternative is startling in its simplicity. Stop needing witnesses. Epictetus told his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Do not live for explanation. Do not live for applause. Do not live for validation. Live for alignment with your values. Live for the integrity of your own soul.
The clarity this brings is astonishing. Suddenly, the absence of recognition is no longer an insult. It is simply reality. You suffer quietly, but the suffering is real, whether or not anyone notices. You endure, and the endurance matters, even if no one claps. You create, you grow, you heal, not to be seen, but because it is right. This is not easy. The child inside still cries out for witnesses. The ego still aches for validation. And yet, to step beyond this illusion is to step into sovereignty. When you stop needing to be seen, you finally see yourself. But if this sounds abstract, let's bring it closer. Imagine someone working in silence at their job. They put in long hours, going beyond what's asked, carrying burdens that others overlook. Day after day they expect that someone, perhaps a manager, perhaps a colleague, will notice. They hope for recognition, not even in the form of a reward, but at least acknowledgement. Yet weeks pass, months pass, and the recognition never arrives. Frustration grows. Resentment blooms. The work itself begins to feel meaningless. This is what happens when we tether meaning to being seen. The labor may have real value, but because it isn't witnessed, it feels invisible.
Now imagine that same person shifts perspective. Instead of working for recognition, they work for integrity. They decide, I will do my best because it is who I am, not because I need others to notice. Suddenly, the resentment loosens. The labor doesn't depend on applause. The work becomes an act of self-respect, not a desperate attempt for visibility. The difference is subtle but transformative. The external conditions remain the same. There may still be no recognition, but internally, sovereignty replaces dependence. This principle applies far beyond work. In relationships, countless people carry the quiet ache of being unseen. One partner may feel they give more, love more, sacrifice more, but go unacknowledged. This becomes fertile ground for bitterness. Why don't they see me? Why don't they notice what I endure? The relationship begins to rot under this invisible weight. But here's the paradox. Often, both partners feel unseen. Each is so wrapped in their own hunger for recognition that they overlook the other. Each is crying out to be witnessed, while simultaneously failing to witness. And so they pass like ghosts, both haunted by the same illusion. The Stoics would suggest a radical shift. Rather than demanding visibility, become the witness to your own actions. Rather than needing acknowledgement, ground yourself in the clarity of your choices. When you do good, know it yourself. When you endure hardship, honor your endurance yourself.
In Marcus Aurelius's words, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. Here, the gaze turns inward. And strangely, when you stop demanding to be seen, you often become more visible. People sense integrity. They sense sovereignty. Attention begins to flow, not because you perform for it, but because authenticity carries a quiet gravity. Yet even this should not be the goal, because the moment you act in order to be noticed, you're back in the trap. The freedom lies in living aligned with yourself,
whether or not anyone ever applauds. Now, modern psychology reinforces this ancient wisdom. Research on attachment theory shows that children who grow up without consistent recognition often develop anxious attachment styles. They become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of being seen or abandoned. This carries into adulthood, fueling relationships where the need to be noticed becomes suffocating. But therapy also reveals the path out, learning to become a secure base for yourself. Instead of begging others for validation, you learn to validate your own experience. Instead of needing someone to say, "I see you," you cultivate the inner voice that says, "I see myself." This is remarkably close to what the Stoics taught centuries ago. Invisibility, then, is not always the curse we imagine. Sometimes it is a gift. When no one is watching, you are free from performance.
Invisibility gives you the space to build silently, to heal privately, to grow authentically. Think of a seed beneath the soil. It is unseen, unnoticed. To the casual eye, it looks like nothing is happening. But in the darkness, transformation is underway. Roots spread, life stirs. If the seed obsessed over being visible, it would despair. But its invisibility is its strength. Only through that hidden stage can it one day break the surface and rise. Our lives are not so different. Much of what shapes us happens in obscurity. The discipline we practice when no one is watching. The kindness we extend that no one ever acknowledges. The battles we fight silently in the night. These unseen moments are the foundation of who we are. To believe that only the seen matters is to miss the essence of life. The most important growth often happens in shadow. Of course, the modern world resists this truth. We live in a visibility economy. Social media thrives on performance. If something isn't posted, it is as if it didn't happen. Meals must be photographed, milestones announced, grief displayed. The currency is attention, and invisibility feels like poverty. But here is the irony. The more you demand to be seen, the less you are truly seen. The endless posts blur together. The curated identities ring hollow. The performance creates noise, not clarity. And deep down, most people feel it. They know that even in their most visible moments, they remain unseen. The Stoics would tell us, step away from the performance. Let the crowd chase attention. You, instead, chase alignment. Build quietly. Live authentically. Allow your life to be shaped by truth, not by witnesses. Epictetus lived this reality. Born into slavery, crippled by injury, he could have spent his life demanding to be noticed as a victim. But instead, he focused inward. He trained his students not to complain about what was beyond their control, but to master their response. His philosophy was not a cry for recognition, but a practice of sovereignty. And 2,000 years later, though he lived in obscurity, his words are still with us. Recognition came not from begging for it, but from embodying truth so fully that it echoed through time. This is the paradox we must learn to embrace. When you stop needing to be seen, your life gains a clarity that no audience could provide. And from that clarity flows a strength the world cannot ignore. Consider how this illusion operates in everyday life. A student spends hours preparing for an exam, silently hoping their effort will be recognized by a teacher. When the grade comes back, even if it's high, the absence of praise feels like a wound. Or an artist pours their heart into a piece of work, sharing it online, waiting for likes and comments to roll in. When they don't, despair creeps in, not because the art lost its value, but because it wasn't witnessed. This is the fragility of a life built on visibility. Your sense of worth becomes hostage to an audience you cannot control. One moment of applause lifts you, one silence destroys you. It is a kind of slavery, a chain forged not by others, but by your own expectations. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by power and visibility as emperor, constantly reminded himself of this trap. He wrote in his meditations,
It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Marcus replied, "Here was the most powerful man in Rome, seen by millions, warning us that being witnessed is not the same as being known." Now let's pause on the distinction. To be witnessed is to be observed. To be known is to be understood. And most people do not have the capacity, or perhaps even the interest, to truly know us. Their attention is scattered, their struggles overwhelming, their gaze fleeting. Yet we convince ourselves that their glance defines us. We beg for crumbs of recognition, even when those crumbs come from strangers scrolling past in boredom. This is not to say connection is meaningless. We are social creatures, wired to bond. But there is a difference between seeking connection and depending on validation. The first enriches life, the second hollows it out. Think of the performer who cannot leave the stage. When the audience claps, they are alive. When the applause fades, they collapse. They have no life apart from being seen. Many of us live this way without realizing it. We are performers in the theater of daily life, waiting for recognition to confirm that we exist. The Stoic path offers another way. Seneca urged, "A man is not worth more because he has a large audience, nor worth less because he has none. He is worth what he is worth." In other words, intrinsic value is not altered by recognition. Gold remains gold whether it is admired or buried. This perspective is especially urgent in the digital age. Social platforms have trained us to equate metrics with meaning. A post with few likes feels like failure. A video with many views feels like success. Yet none of these numbers can measure truth, depth, or alignment. They measure only attention, unstable currency, easily given, easily withdrawn. The consequence is exhaustion. People curate identities, craft performances, and edit their lives into consumable fragments, all in the hope of being seen. But what is seen is rarely the truth. And so the paradox deepens. The more you try to be visible, the less authentic you become, until eventually you are not even visible to yourself. This is where the illusion becomes most dangerous. Because when you cannot see yourself clearly, no amount of external recognition will ever satisfy. The applause becomes hollow, the likes become meaningless, and still the hunger grows. Modern psychology names this the hedonic treadmill. The pleasure of recognition fades quickly, requiring more and more to maintain the same feeling. Like a drug, validation never truly fills the void, it only numbs it temporarily. Which is why the Stoic prescription remains powerful. Step off the treadmill. Anchor yourself in clarity, not visibility. Let's ground this in an image. Picture a mountain. Whether clouds surround it, whether people climb it, whether storms batter it, the mountain remains itself. It does not need witnesses to exist. Its worth is not measured by how many gaze upon it. It is steady, enduring, whole. This is what the Stoics invite us to become. Mountains, not mirrors. Mountains stand in their own nature. Mirrors depend on reflection. But how do we get there, practically? It begins with small acts of self-witnessing. When you finish a task, pause not to wait for applause, but to acknowledge yourself. I showed up. I did what I said I would do. When you endure hardship, honor your resilience. I carried this weight. I survived this night. When you act with integrity, recognize it inwardly. I chose what was right, even unseen. These practices shift the gaze from outer to inner. They build an internal foundation strong enough to withstand the absence of recognition. Over time, you stop asking, "Did they notice?" and start asking, "Am I aligned?" This is not withdrawal from the world. It is engagement from a place of strength. Because when you no longer beg for visibility, you are free to act with clarity. You can serve others without resenting their silence. You can build work without obsessing over its reception. You can love without keeping score of acknowledgement. The irony is that this kind of integrity often creates the most authentic connections. When people sense you do not need their recognition, they are drawn to you. Not because you chase their attention, but because you carry a rare steadiness. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth. Despite being surrounded by politics, flattery, and criticism, he wrote daily reminders to himself. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit. His focus was inward, not in selfishness, but in clarity. He knew the danger of being consumed by the gaze of others. In modern terms, this is what psychologists call self-determination theory. It shows that true well-being arises from autonomy, competence, and relatedness, not from external validation. Autonomy means living aligned with your own values. Competence means developing mastery in what matters. Relatedness means connecting deeply, not widely. None of these require mass recognition. All of them require authenticity. So the question becomes, are you living as a mirror, desperate for reflection, or as a mountain, steady in your own being? The shift toward the mountain is not easy. Centuries of conditioning urge us to perform. Childhood trained us to expect recognition as proof of worth. Society rewards the visible and ignores the hidden. But difficulty is not impossibility. Every act of self-witnessing is a stone placed in the foundation of sovereignty. Every time you release the need for recognition, you step off the treadmill. And over time, invisibility itself becomes a kind of teacher. It strips away illusions. It reveals who you are when no one is watching. And in that solitude, you discover something the world cannot give and cannot take away: clarity. But clarity alone is not the end. It is the beginning of a new kind of freedom. Once you no longer depend on being seen, you begin to see differently yourself. The world shifts. You notice the quiet details others overlook, the way sunlight scatters on a wall, the resilience in someone's tired eyes, the courage in small acts of kindness. When you are no longer consumed by the hunger to be noticed, you gain the capacity to notice. And that, perhaps, is the greatest irony. By releasing the illusion of being seen, you become capable of truly seeing. You see yourself with honesty. You see others with compassion. You see life as it unfolds, not as a stage for performance, but as a reality to be engaged. Think of Epictetus again. To his students, he must have appeared ordinary, a lame old man in a modest room, speaking words that few beyond his circle ever heard. Yet his teachings carried the fire of liberation. He had no fame in his lifetime, no great recognition. And yet, centuries later, his words are read across the world. His legacy is not that he was seen, but that he saw clearly. Contrast this with the countless performers of his time, actors in the Roman theaters who drew crowds of thousands. They were adored, recognized, applauded. But where are their names now? Buried in dust, forgotten. Their visibility was bright, but brief. Epictetus's obscurity proved enduring. This is the paradox of legacy. It is never truly under your control. Some who chase recognition vanish quickly. Some who live in obscurity echo through centuries. You cannot predict which path will be yours, but you can choose this, to live aligned with truth, regardless of audience. Modern psychology mirrors this in the study of intrinsic motivation. Those who act out of inner purpose rather than outer validation are more resilient, more creative, more fulfilled. Their work sustains them because it arises from within, not because it earns applause. Recognition may or may not follow, but the life itself is full. So how do we begin dismantling the illusion in practical terms? It begins with awareness. Notice how often your mind drifts toward recognition. You send a message. Do you wait anxiously for the reply? You post a thought. Do you measure its worth by the reaction it receives? You work quietly. Do you secretly hope someone notices your effort? Simply seeing these habits is the first act of liberation. Then, practice redirection. When the craving for recognition arises, pause. Ask yourself, if no one ever saw this, would it still be worth doing? If the answer is no, perhaps the act is hollow. If the answer is yes, then do it anyway, without expectation. Next, cultivate private rituals of self-recognition. Keep a journal where you acknowledge your own efforts, as Marcus Aurelius did. Speak to yourself with honesty about your growth, your struggles, your integrity. Become your own witness. And finally, shift your focus outward. When you stop demanding to be seen, you create space to see others. Instead of asking, "Why don't they notice me?" begin asking, "How can I notice them?" See the invisible labor of those around you. Acknowledge the unrecognized struggles. Offer recognition without expectation of return. In doing so, you break the cycle of hunger and begin the cycle of generosity. The Stoics remind us that much of life is beyond our control. Whether others see us or not is among those things. To tether your worth to their gaze is to surrender your freedom. To anchor your worth in your own clarity is to claim it. But there is one final layer worth exploring: the fear beneath the illusion. Why do we long so desperately to be seen? At its root, it is the fear of non-existence. If no one notices us, do we matter? If no one remembers us, did we live? This is the quiet terror that drives so much performance. The Stoics did not shy away from this fear. They faced it directly in their practice of memento mori. Remember that you will die. Visibility cannot prevent death. Recognition cannot shield you from impermanence. The applause will fade. The memory will vanish. All that remains is how you lived. And so the question deepens. If you were never remembered, never recognized, never seen, would your life still be worth living? The Stoics answer, yes, if you lived with virtue, if you lived in alignment, if you lived with clarity. Because worth is not bestowed by witnesses, it is inherent in the act of living truthfully. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And much of what we waste is spent chasing visibility, demanding to be seen. What if we reclaimed that time? What if instead of performing, we practiced presence? What if instead of demanding recognition, we cultivated integrity? Life would not become smaller, it would become fuller. Because you would no longer live as a ghost begging for acknowledgement, but as a being fully alive in each moment, whether seen or unseen.
To live unseen is not the same as to live unloved. Often, the deepest love is quiet, unspoken, unnoticed by the world. A parent watching their child sleep. A friend showing up in crisis without announcing it. A partner supporting silently through hardship. These acts may never be celebrated, but they are the marrow of life. To dismiss them as meaningless because they are unseen is to misunderstand love itself. And so, let us return to the seed. Beneath the soil, invisible, it gathers strength. It does not beg for recognition. It does not demand an audience. It simply grows. When the time comes, it breaks the surface, not for applause, but because it is its nature. And in time, it becomes a tree, offering shade, shelter, and fruit. Many may rest beneath it, yet the tree does not grow for their recognition. It grows because that is what it was made to do. You too are such a seed. Your growth is not dependent on being seen. Your worth is not determined by recognition. Your life is not measured by applause. You are here to grow, to align, to live. Whether or not anyone notices, that is enough. And in this truth lies freedom. The illusion of being seen no longer binds you. You can live quietly, powerfully, authentically. You can act with integrity in obscurity. You can love without needing acknowledgement. You can build without demanding applause. You can endure without requiring recognition. And paradoxically, when you no longer need to be seen, you become radiant. Not because you chased visibility, but because clarity itself shines. People may notice, or they may not. It no longer matters. The Stoics remind us, focus on what is within your control, and whether others see you or not. that is never within your control. But to live aligned, to live with virtue, to live fully, that is yours. So let the crowd chase recognition. Let the world clamor for visibility. You, instead, become steady as the mountain, silent as the seed, free as the soul, that no longer begs for witnesses. Live as though unseen, and in doing so, discover the deepest vision of all. If this meditation on being unseen has resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on how much lighter life feels when we release the need for constant recognition. And if you'd like to keep exploring these truths with us, I invite you to subscribe and share this journey. Each step we take together strengthens the path toward clarity and inner freedom.